Welcome to the Air Combat Simulation Podcast, brought to you by BVR Productions. Together with content creators, mission builders, experts, and enthusiasts, we explore the comprehensive world of combat aircraft simulation.
Welcome everyone to episode 4 of the Air Combat Sim. I'm Baltic Dragon, and today we have as a panel members we have Goat and Red Kite.
Hello.
Hello.
And we have Apache600 and Sabre TLA as our guests to talk with this episode main topic, which is missions and campaigns at DCS and probably not only DCS. Hi guys.
How you doing, everybody?
Hey everyone.
So we've talked a little bit about the third party, or not only third party modules. So we have all those nice aircraft, all those nice helicopters we're playing around in, and once we get to know them well, we want to jump into some action and do something more meaningful with them, and that's where the missions and campaigns come to play. And so together with me, there are 3 third-party devs in the room, and we'll talk about what it takes to make a good mission, what we think people expect from a good mission, and let's see how it goes. So guys, first, before we start, maybe tell a little bit about yourselves.
Sure, I guess I could take first. I was Apache600, I normally just go by Apache. Came to DCS back in 2014 or so. Military flying is always something I've wanted to do since a child, but being diagnosed with childhood asthma, flying in the military was never a viable option for me. Thankfully, I was able to start a career in commercial aviation, which I'm currently flying an Airbus right now, so that's about the closest I can get, but I'm not going to complain at all. I love it. With DCS, though, like I said, that was the closest I could get to a dream that I always had. I really enjoy the simulator because it does the things that you read about, you see in the movies.
Your campaign that you have in DCS is a museum relic, right?
That's correct.
And thanks for sending me. I was able to, since I don't own the Sabre or the MiG-15, I don't fly them, but I did get a copy from you to check it with MiG-19, and I have to say what I saw was really good. I really enjoyed it.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Baltic.
And then Sabre, I mean, you're well known for Maple Flag missions, so you have a full long list of basic flight training and advanced aircraft training for A-10, also aggressive campaigns for F-18 and F-5?
And the F-15, yeah. Yeah, I guess a little bit of my background then. I've been in military sim since the late 80s. Started, at least in this area, with Flanker and then Lomac, and then got into DCS. And I guess our missions kind of mimic my training, I guess, because when the A-10 came along, I really loved the A-10 and really got into it and wanted to kind of come up with a set of missions that could prove my learning. And I got a lot of good feedback from people about it, so that kind of got us started. And it was the same with the aggressors. Great respect for the aggressor squadrons and what they do. And felt, couldn't really just jump in a red flag campaign right away without having some BFM and ACM type experience. So that's kind of where our background came from. But yeah, I've been simming a long time, and I never thought I'd get to a point with DCS where we've got, like military grade simulators sitting in my office, that's high end. I remember playing Micropose Gunship. I think it was on a Commodore 64 or something like that. And the stick figures, and the mountains were like line drawings. So to me, DCS is just such a huge improvement. And of course, VR. I made an A-10 pit at one point with working switches, and I had the Lily put USB MFCDs and all of that. Helios was driving the gauges. And as soon as I got into VR, that was it. I ripped all that stuff out. Still keeping all the switches, though, because you get that tactile feel in VR, which is pretty cool when you reach over and, the gear shift is where you see it in VR and you're touching it. But yeah, to me, this is a fantastic time to be simming, and DCS is just a fantastic product. I love it. Really, really committed and passionate to it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. But I agree that the VR is kind of killing the pits. I never thought about building my own pit because of that. Since I have the VR,
you got to try it. Yeah, you got to try it with VR with the real switches, though. It's freaking cool, man. I can't wait until they actually have the arms moving and you can see your hand reach for the switch and stuff. But when you feel it and you got in VR, it's unreal. Yeah, it really is. So
my little workaround to that, I use an Oculus Rift S. You can remove the nose gap.
Yeah, you can speak through it.
I have a button box that holds my HOTAS, and I have to look down the bridge of my nose. But it works pretty well because when I'm trying to learn something from Red Kite's video or Chuck's guide or whatnot, I like to have the VR, but also have something on my lap that I can reference off of. And having that nose gap is pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to see more of in the game is the knee boards in VR. Like you can bring them up, but I'd say they're a little clunky. I think the coolest thing I saw in the 18 though is the knee boards are coming up on your left hip, so you could zoom down in and look at it that way, which is kind of cool without having to have it pop up as a floating thing, in mission. So I thought that was really neat. But
so you guys, is it 90% VR or is it 95% or how do you split it? Or 100%?
I'm about 60-40, maybe 70-30, like 70% VR for testing, but a lot of the design is done like at a design workstation for me. So I do all the design, just with a regular monitor, but then when I'm testing, I'll definitely test it in VR just to make sure it looks okay and the frame rates are okay and things like that. So, yeah.
I gotta say, lately I've kind of been 10% VR, 90% screen, just because of the amount of time we spend in the mission editor. But on top of that, I've also been trying to expand my knowledge base, learning the F-16 and the 18 and the JF-17, and I find it just easier to learn systems and like the targeting pod or whatnot on a flat screen, so I can actually see what I'm referencing a little bit easier.
Plus, you can have a printed checklist or something, or an iPad with a checklist on it, so you can reference that. Yeah, when we're learning, the same thing. Yeah, we do the same thing when we're learning. We play flat screen and that, but
I think also for the mission building, at least the first 2 or 3 tries you'll do on a flat screen because there are so many things you have to note down that you need to adjust. It's crazy. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I've been doing it for a long time, but still every time there's so many small mistakes or things I need to adjust. Even if I think everything was done correctly, then it wouldn't be practical to do it in VR.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, you're doing a lot of that test repeat cycle and using the speed up a lot to get through parts of the mission. And it's one of the frustrating parts is if you make a change right at the very end of the mission, you kind of have to apply the whole thing. And if it's an hour-long mission, that's like 1 hour turnaround time every time you make a change, right? And it's like, oh, that didn't work. Okay, there's another hour. Depending on how your mission is done. But yeah.
Yeah, those are technicalities that people probably will not even want to get into about those flags and how you can jump into the middle of mission instantly just to check some things. But DCS being DCS, sometimes one thing will work only after some other thing happens. So anyway, you have to fly the whole thing to just check if everything works as you want.
Yeah. Do you guys put a lot of debug, like F10 commands in to kind of make things happen to test sections of code out? Do you do like that kind of debug at all, or no?
Yep, a lot.
Continuously, yes.
Continuously, yeah. Okay.
I mean, you mean you've encountered any bugs in the past in DCS?
No, I mean when you're testing like some part of changes you made in your mission to want to prove that it works, you might not have to. You could set something up in the radio menu so you can just trigger it without having to do all the parts in the mission that might make it happen. That's what I meant.
Yeah, sure.
Bugs in DCS, yeah, well. What's there to say about that? It's a software product. There's always going to be bugs, right? So
yeah,
it's a matter of how bad they are.
We may have wandered off a little bit to what Sabre was saying about using the F10 menu to skip ahead in your mission falsely, so to speak. I will have it where I'll have radio commands to trigger things that I'm not actually triggering with my aircraft, but just to test to see if it works further down the road.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But coming back to our main topic is, before asking about the whole process, I'd like to ask you, what do you guys think is good mission? What does it need to have? Or when is it compelling for you? What should it have?
Well, I think it depends on a couple of things. Who is your target audience is the biggest question. Are you making this for a single player? Are you making it for a small multiplayer group or a large one? That will totally drive the direction of which you're going.
Yeah, I agree with Apache. I think it's a story, right? You want to tell a story, and I think like your campaign, Apache, was very much story based, right? Which is really good. Mine are more training focused, but I think you're right. It's really trying to identify what message are you trying to give, and then there's a lot of rules I'd say around, or maybe guidelines around how you achieve that, right? Like you don't want the mission to be too long because some people can't play for 6 hours. You don't want too many units in the mission because then the people with poor systems can't play it because the FPS drops. So there's a whole bunch of things around that, but to me, it's really around the story and as Apache said, the audience, right? Who are you trying to talk to, right? Like Navy campaigns to me are going to be very have a certain lingo to them and everything else just because they're appealing to the Navy crowd, right? As opposed to the Air Force crowd or helicopter crowd or, whoever, even combined arms. I haven't seen enough campaigns in combined arms yet to me. So that I think is an area that needs to be explored more, but it is a, digital combat simulator. And I saw recently that submarines can actually dive now too, and which is kind of cool. So maybe we'll even see some underwater warfare at some point.
They can dive now? I missed that. That's cool.
Yeah, there's a video that somebody put up recently on it was the Grim Reapers had one, and it was a Kilo, I think, and it was attacking a couple of destroyers, and it actually dove, and you could see a little periscope pop up, and that it was very cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, so it's coming. Like all that stuff to me is very exciting to see how it's continuing to evolve.
The submarines have a depth parameter, like aircraft have an altitude parameter, so you can command them to go up and down at will. I think it's in preparation for the U-boats and World War II, because that's where it will be quite important, because they will submerge and surface quite a lot. So you can imagine, say, taking the Mosquito and doing an anti-submarine mission with the channel map.
With the sub diving while you're trying to bomb it. Yeah, that would be very interesting. Wow.
You guys are talking about that, and my mind is just going through how great I'm going to run every submarine into the ground and beach it, and more bugging and more tests to do.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Just straight up through the middle of it.
Yeah.
But getting back to what Baltic said about a good mission, I think there's a number of things involved, right? I mean, I think you want it to be realistic and immersive for sure. Though there are people that like shooting down UFOs, for example, and things like that. But I think an element of realism to it. Like Ranger got a lot of support for his campaigns because I think he did a really good job at making them feel really, realistic, right? I think people that are into military sims like that realism, at least for me, that's what I like. I like, things to SOP and things that are very realistic.
And I think you're hitting the nail on the head there, Sabre. I think a lot of people really do like the realism. I enjoy it. I think I went a complete other direction and made a total hypothetical fantasy thing, which I think there is a niche for as well.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, again, you had a great story, Apache. Like your storyline was excellent, right? So that I think tells a lot. Just like a book, right? You can have any kind of story, but as long as it can draw the reader in or the player in, and it's exciting, and there's lots for them to do, Yeah.
When we create missions as well, I think there's actually, Sabre, have you done any multiplayer stuff?
Yeah, I did. I got to play with the 132nd for a short time as a JTAC. I think I did one mission with them. It was very cool. They were really, I guess you could say, hardcore in the sense that the procedures and everything. Then I had an opportunity to play with the Stingers, with Jar and that team for a while, and that was a great fun. Jar runs a perfect, great squad there. Nothing but kudos to him and his team there. But like you, I think you said early on, Apache, your internet was bad. Mine's the same. I live in rural Canada, so the internet's kind of crappy for me. So multiplayer, I get a lot of lag and things like that, But once in a while, I'll jump on a server just to try it and see. I've been on the 104th and a few others just to give it a try. But I think we're dedicated to single player just because of our internet.
I see. I think in Atlanta, the internet connection is not too bad, so I can thankfully do some multiplayer stuff without too many hiccups. But when starting a creation of a mission, obviously the first question is, are we creating a mission for a campaign? Are we creating a single player mission, or are we going multiplayer? With the multiplayer missions, the way that I curtail mine when I make those is I want to make them relaxing. I know that there's a lot of guys that like SOP, that like, you depart from the carrier at 500 feet until you're 5 miles, then you can climb your cruising. I follow enough stars and SIDS and routes in my normal job. I kind of don't want to do that when I'm playing a game.
Yeah.
So my multiplayer missions, I try and just make relaxing and straightforward. But I think my biggest thing is when I jump into a server and there's a multiplayer mission going on and there's not a direction in which everybody knows which way they're going. I like it when it's easy to understand and easy to find the objective and understand what you're doing once you get in. I think that's one of the most disconnecting things for me is I jump in, people are doing their own thing, and there's no guidance. There's no briefing pages. There's no knee boards telling you what you need to do. And I think that's a big thing with the creator of a mission, to make it so that the mission is playable without the person who made it having to be in the mission explaining what you need to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think there's a big barrier for a lot of players in multiplayer that, well, there's different crowds of people too, right? There are those that just want to jump in and blow stuff up, and then there are those that kind of want to do the full mission suite, from briefing to takeoff, land, and then, post brief. But yeah, I agree with you. I think the barrier there, if you jump on a server and it's hard to figure out what you're supposed to be doing, and then 5 minutes in you get shot down and you don't even know what happened, and things like that, then it's kind of frustrating, right? So again, that whole experience, right?
It's the question whether you create a sandbox, which is more difficult in a way, and it's more difficult to get people engaged in the way you want them to, or do a co-op mission that everything is set and do it for a squadron or whatever. So I think these are the differences. But yeah, multiplayer is a whole different sphere, I think. And it brings me to the question: what do you think, guys, will happen? Will the multiplayer campaigns become a reality? So just, changing the single player ones to multiplayer. Do you think it will happen?
You and I are familiar with this, as I assume Sabre is as well. But until Eagle Dynamics can figure out protection, it won't happen.
Not a straight. Yeah, I agree. Not a straight copy of a paid campaign, because you'd just be giving everything away, right? So I agree with that. But to go to Baltic's question, though, do you think there'll be multiplayer campaigns? I can see that, because I could see where a multiplayer server would run, and maybe they have a mission that runs every hour, and that, at the end of the hour, especially when the dynamic campaign capability comes along, that the next hour's mission is a follow-on from the previous hour's mission, if you know what I mean, right? So you get that dynamic stuff, and you could jump in and out, as a player, and the whole war could have evolved, from where you were at 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and things like that, because the server is just cranking out this dynamic campaign, hour after hour after hour, or something like that, right? I don't know what the limit is on multiplayer missions right now. Like, can you have one mission that lasts for, 10 hours or a day or something like that? I don't think the server can stay up that long, right? Do we have missions like that? Do you know?
I think most servers will run for about 3 hours before they reset.
Report 3, okay.
Yeah. So they'll run their objectives, and then they'll reset the map and reload the objectives, and then they'd go again for 3 hours with some new weather.
So if the dynamic campaign comes along where you can save the results of the previous mission, so to speak, then effectively you could have 3 3-hour segments for 9-hour campaign, and have different things happening each time, right? Potentially, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see how the dynamic campaign thing really.
Just as a quick question is and again, being somewhat of a newbie, why do the servers reboot as often as they do? Is it just because it'll crash eventually?
Memory leak, maybe. Yeah.
I think it's just DCS will eventually crash, so they'd prefer to give it a composed end rather than a sudden unexplained ending. Especially with some of the recent updates, you get memory leaks and other quirks, and things start to break down, or the scripts stop happening, or the units on the map start to run out and you can't spawn anymore because of the way the unit spawning can work sometimes.
I think an issue with that too is you cannot despawn a destroyed unit, so the battlefield just becomes absolutely cluttered.
Littered, yeah.
Well, I think we'll go back to the dynamic campaign a bit later because that's a big topic in itself. But let's finish on the single player now. Just wanted to ask you guys, how do you get started when conceptualizing the mission or coming up with ideas or the campaign? Where does it start? Do you do the whole thing so you have the whole thing planned and you know how many missions, what will happen in which one, or you develop it as you go?
Well, I guess for me, we actually draw up a development document, and I guess we start with a concept. It might come from a book, like we have a lot of the Osprey Combat series books, so we get a lot of inspiration from some of the stories in there. So we'll come up with a concept, and we'll float it to Ed, and then we'll do a development document that details, well, here's the mission set that we think, can fit that concept. And then, if we get the approval from Matt or whoever, then we'll start working on it and that kind of thing. So I guess it's kind of an organic thing too, I guess, because once we've laid out our dev document, we start working on it, things can change, right? You start developing and you go, oh, we can't really do what we thought we could do, so we have to change it a bit. But in the essence of trying to keep within that concept. But yeah, the concepts come from all over. I mean, movies, lots of books, I'd say, and now a lot of research on the internet. There's tons of stuff now. So yeah, that's kind of where we get our inspiration from.
So you're saying we. So as a Maple Flag, how many people do you have working on those missions?
Well, I guess I'm the chief developer, but I've got I can't. I mean, if I add up all the people that are involved, it's quite a large list because we have voice recording artists all around the world. My video teaser guy is in South Korea. Testers, yeah.
But talking about the core team, of course, voice actors and all that. That's lots of people from the community.
Probably just myself for the most part doing the design because I like to control that part of it. So I don't know how many people you guys work with. I know that a lot of people look for volunteers for voiceovers and things like that. So,
Sabre, do you have people that will set up like the base work of a mission and then you go and critique it and fine tune it, or how do you go about creating one of your missions?
No, I usually start it myself. I create a template and then I try to reuse that template as much as I can. Well, as development, I'm doing a lot of testing. Yeah, I don't want to release a mission unless I know I can pass it myself. So that's kind of my own litmus test. But then once it's getting a little more confirmed, I'll take it out to some other testers to see if they can try it and see, what they can find in it. But and to get some feedback. But it's pretty much in house for the most part, I'd say. Yeah, I'm trying not to. Well, until we know it's officially going to get released, we don't advertise a lot, as you probably noticed. We kind of come out and say, "Oh, it's ready." Here it is. Here's the teaser video for it and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's been an excellent experience, I have to admit. I'm working with people all around the world, which is something I never really experienced before. Most of the jobs I've had, I've worked with a team, but we were all in an office and everything was kind of co-located. We might have had one team somewhere else, but this kind of development and hobby is like worldwide, right? So
I think it's a good moment to give a shout out to the whole community, because without community, those missions would have never existed. Even the voiceovers. I mean, if you just look at the prices of a normal voice actors that charge for that, probably there will be no DLCs. But the community is incredible. There's lots of people who volunteer. They do a lot. There are lots of subject matter experts that help with research and all that stuff. So the DCS community is just great.
It's a passionate community. That's what I find. People are very passionate about it, and that's really nice to see. And they're committed and helpful, and yeah, all of that. It's huge. Great help from the community. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. I think there's a lot of selfless people that will happily devote and volunteer time. For the people that have done voiceovers for my missions and campaigns, I can't thank them enough. It's been an absolute huge help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With Museum Relic, I don't have the templates or books or anything that Sabre was referring to. I kind of just went off of the whole fantasy thing. When I was a child, I would bring a box of Legos, some fireworks, and my dad's old camcorder to the sandbox and shoot my own little videos of destruction and mayhem and whatnot. And when I started creating Museum Relic, it kind of felt like I was being able to be the director of my own movie again.
That's cool. Yeah.
As I went through building the museum relic, I had about 6 or 7 missions that I clumped together and I sent out to a couple of people to have them test it. And everybody responded saying they really enjoyed it and they wanted more. And at that time, the MiG-15 and the F-86, they were pretty new to DCS and they didn't have any content. So that's when I thought, hey, maybe I can create some content. But I never really had the mindset of taking it to the point where it got. So after creating a whole ton of missions, stringing them together, finding a story that fit why a MiG-15 or an F-86 would even be taking place in a modern battlefield, it started evolving into something that I was actually quite excited about. The first versions of it were myself doing all the voiceovers, and I got really sick of listening to myself all the time.
Yeah.
And that's when I went to the community, as Baltic Dragon was saying earlier, about how the community is just fantastic, and people were happy to volunteer. And I was able to incorporate their voices into the game. Even my wife volunteered. She's the helicopter pilot in some of the missions. But that's how Museum Relic went, and I kind of did the story as I went along. I had an idea of how I wanted it to end, but a lot of the missions in the middle of the campaign were kind of, what can I do that might be unique, that the player would enjoy, that doesn't really push the limits to a difficulty in which it's frustrating, but something that's fun enough and enjoyable enough, and that is rewarding. And I've only got the one campaign. Geez, Sabre, I think you've got what, like 7 or 8? And Baltic, you've got 4 or 5. So I'm certainly bringing up the tail end of the supply of content. But I will say I've got a second one I'm working on. But when I started the second one, I actually haven't even designed a single mission for it yet. I've just been doing nothing but story writing. And after the release of Museum Relic, I had a lot of people that said that they really enjoyed the story. And I thought that, well, if I make another one, I'm going to put a lot of effort, a lot of time into a story, because like I said, that's a way that I can kind of be a director, something that I always enjoyed doing as a kid, and storytelling. So like I said, it certainly isn't anything SOP or the military lingo or anything. I go a different direction with my stuff.
I think that's brilliant, though, to be honest, Apache. And the reason was, I think a lot are in their own movie. And when you give them a vehicle like that with a storyline that they can relate to and be the hero or whatever, be the star, I think that's fantastic. I think that's why people like hero movies. I think that's why people like to read books that have really good storylines. And I think, I think that's a brilliant way to do campaigns is tell a story where the player is actively involved and contributing and gets a lot out of it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to your next campaign. That'll be very exciting to see.
But it brings a lot of limitations as well. I mean, I'm talking about Mission Editor and DCS itself. And this is what I noticed when I'm working on the Raven 1 campaign with 2 former pilots. It's just incredible to have the script that you write being screened and updated by people who really did it and did it, like both have more than 3,000 hours in the F-18. But on the other hand, it's kind of a bit intimidating because, the fighter pilots are very, they pay a lot of attention to even smallest details. And also, they don't really know the limitations of the DCS itself. And it's a very interesting process to kind of finding the middle ground between the realism and what they want to see in the script and what we can deliver in the DCS. And that brings me to another question. How do you rate the editor? How do you rate the possibilities it gives you? And do you know what do you do to sometimes push the limits?
Oh boy.
I'll let you go first, Apache, if you want.
Oh, thank you.
Keep that mode of you first, I second.
All right. Let me think.
Let me just do you use scripts like Lua scripting, or you just use the triggers that are in the mission editor?
Sure thing. So with the Museum Relic, I use only mission editor available options. With most of the multiplayer missions that I make, I again use almost all mission editor only options. I do have a few scripts that I use just for like lacing a target, or maybe doing an air respawn for an enemy AI, or a tanker script. But I will be the first to admit I have zero knowledge of coding. And scripts are kind of scary because they require a lot of coding. If something goes wrong, I have no idea how to fix the script, but I do understand the mission editor, and that's why I kind of rely on that more than any script.
100% support from my side. Exactly what I'm doing too.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I've got a programmer background, so the Lua scripting is something I could do, and I understand, Moose and Mist to some degree. I haven't actually used any of that stuff yet, though. But like the CTLD script is pretty cool for helicopters, where you can pick up cargo and people and things. But I agree. I think from at least from a commercial perspective, having dependency on a script that isn't fully or officially supported by it is kind of risky, because if there ever is a problem and you're trying to support your product and that person who wrote that script is no longer supporting it or whatever, then it's on you to try and fix it, right? So yeah. Like you guys, I'm relying on, if it's in Ed's mission editor, we'll definitely use it. And I think Ed's committed to making the mission editor better. I think it's pretty good compared to some of the others. Like I did missions in IL2 for a while, and a few other games there, and I think this one's pretty detailed. There's a lot of things you can do with it. I think, could it be better? Sure, but it certainly can do a lot of the basic stuff that you want to do, right?
But it's also amazing. I noticed that if you think out of the box, how many things you can achieve if you just do them differently sometimes, that they are designed to, let's say. And usually there are 2 or 3 ways to get the same result, and some of them work, some of them don't. On purpose or not, that depends. It's different with the mission editor. Mm-hmm. But for instance, look at the FLAC or the AAA, or FLAC, not AAA. Mm-hmm. You can use the ones from the World War II, which don't really work well with the fast-moving jets, at least the ones that we have there. But if you just use the explosions in zone at certain altitudes, you get a very nice result. Of course, there's lots of work and putting everything manually, but you can get what you need just by being creative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. So yeah, I think they've done a lot to make the editor, pretty good. It's intimidating to a lot of people when you first get into it, though. And I think I learn something new about it every time we do a mission. Just we try something different and go, oh look, this is something new we haven't tried before. And
you can keep this on or off the record, but I think I might have just learned something new right now just listening to this. You can set explosions at altitudes?
Yeah, of course. But remember, it's in meters. It's not in feet.
Yeah, everything's in meters. Yeah.
Okay.
Once you do that, and then you just add a random flag from 1 to 100, and you put 100 different zones, so you can every second have a random explosion at random altitude in random zone, and you have a nice flag.
With that bit of knowledge right there, my mind is already diving into scenarios in which I can use that what you just told me about, Baltic, for some kind of visual thing in a mission. But the gears are already turning in. How can I implement that?
Exactly. That's how it works. I mean, for me, the funny story probably is lots of ideas for my missions came is when I had 3 kids, almost one after another, and I spent lots of sleepless nights with 1, 2, or 3 of them. And just when trying to put them to sleep, I had lots of time to think, and that's where the best part of the enemy within 3.0 got kind of to being in a way.
I got 2 kids, and I had no time for DCS because I'm just knee deep in dirty diapers and Lord knows what. So good on you, Baltic.
Yeah, I guess I'm so provisioned because my daughter just got married in 2015 and just had her first kid. So I'm almost I'm a grandpa now. So.
Hey, congratulations!
Congrats!
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to retire soon so I can do full time on DCS campaign development. That would be my dream job. So yeah, right now it's just a hobby, but it's passion.
Sabre, you talked about the editor and how intimidating it can be for some people. But then again, there are lots of people who are not third-party devs, but they do it. I just checked before we joined numbers of user files. So in the add user files section, you have 1,192 single missions available, 227 campaigns, and 612 multiplayer missions. Which means there's lots of people who are actually using that.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised there aren't more of those developers actually approaching Ed. I know Nineline put out a forum post about asking for more campaigns from people, because I think there are some very, very good campaign developers now that could be pushing commercial product and helping Ed with revenue and that. And I'm surprised that more of them aren't trying to do that. But maybe they're worried about the long-term commitment. Maybe they're worried about the licensing and copyright and all those kind of things that commercial people have to worry about. But I'd recommend go for it, because if it's your passion and you love it, then it's not work, right? It's just fun time all the time. Even if I'm testing the same trigger a million times, it's still fun trying to break it or whatever, right? So
absolutely,
yeah.
we'll put
but
the
you're right.
link.
There's tons of good developers out there and people with lots of great ideas and all over the gamut. So yeah, I encourage people to get their stuff out there. It's good.
I think we should put the link to Nineline's post in the notes. And yeah, I would also encourage people, it takes time. It takes time to build missions. It takes time to troubleshoot them afterwards, but it's really worth every minute. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the just the feeling of really having good feedback and doing something nice.
Passion. Yeah, your passion. It's great.
I will say one of the things that is the best feeling in the world is you make a mission or a campaign or whatnot, and you receive both sides of it. You receive good feedback and bad feedback. You got to take it all with the bad feedback as it comes. But when you get comments that say, "Hey, this is the most fun I've had playing a video game in 14 years or something," it really makes the nights that you spend the hours and hours and hours of testing triggers that just don't want to fire properly, or AI that do something just wonky, it makes it worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just to give a shout out to one of the guys I saw. So when talking about people who are not now third-party developers, but are doing a great job in terms of campaigns and missions, the one person I'd like to really point to is Sedlo, and his campaigns for Harrier, and I think F-18 too, are really good.
There's a second one I'd like to add to that one, which is, I think his name's Cabellum. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it entirely right, but he's done the Cage the Bear campaigns for the F-14 Tomcat. They were recently introduced into the module itself, and that included a multiplayer variant which came out quite recently, and those have been really good missions to play through, especially if you're doing a multiplayer with your own Rio.
Fantastic. That would be amazing if you would be able to make something that would be publishable quality. I'm sure that I haven't played the one yet because I'm not really versed yet in the F-14, but to have a campaign in which you have a dedicated Rio and a front seater, that would be game changing.
I think that's kind of plea to the third-party devs, because it's all in their hands. They would probably have to contract someone to do the campaign for them.
It's also quite difficult because of the multiplayer limitation. You can't have the protection on it, so it can't be a paid product. Like, I know the Tomcat campaigns should be multiplayer when they come out, but of course they'll have no protection but they're part of the module, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem for them. But if you're doing it as a standalone product, then it does become a big issue.
No, but that's why I'm saying third-party developers for the modules, so for Hitblur, Rasbom, etc.
Oh, like your situation where you have it with the Mirage and whatnot in the MiG?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I did the recent campaign in Persian Gulf, which I also released now as a multiplayer version, because it's easier, because it's not protected.
And that's, I think, one of the hiccups with having a third-party, non-associated multiplayer campaign, because of that protection issue, in which you can't protect the mission files, because once somebody plays it, they have the track file, you can turn that into a mission file, and now you've got unlimited access to it.
Yeah. But having said that, I remember someone found a way to play the protected campaign in his multiplayer. I think he even contacted Ed, but I don't know what came out of it. Probably wasn't that interesting or that safe, I don't know. But there were attempts.
Yeah, I think to be honest, I think that Ed could produce some really good, commercial quality multiplayer campaigns and do it as a cost of sales. And what I mean by that is like they don't charge it as a paid product for it, because we know that once it's released, anybody can copy it and run it anywhere. But if they did it as part of a cost of sales, I guess is the way I'd describe it, as kind of a loss leader to get people interested in a particular module and things like that, because they could still hire the third party to do the work and pay them appropriately or whatever, but it could be a lost leader for them to get more revenue in on the module sale, for example, right? Because that's one of the complaints a lot of people say, right? They get this new module, where's the campaign for it? There's no campaign, and maybe there's just a few missions, like 3 or 4 missions for it or something like that. Whereas I think if they had a new module come out and they really wanted to showcase it, hire a third-party dev to do it, or maybe some of us would do it, just as on a pro bono or whatever, like lawyers do, and get something out there to really promote that module and drive the sales. Right? Could be part of the whole product package as opposed to just here's the module, right? And let the community come up with a bunch of stuff,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had people, and I don't want to kind of exaggerate or something, but I had people saying that they bought a module like, let's say, Mirage, because they played the enemy within and they saw that there was a campaign done for that module. So I think some people will look at it before committing to an airplane for $60 or $70.
Yeah, if you look at the old flight sims that we used to buy, right, where they were standalone on a CD, you wouldn't be able to download missions or anything, but everything was kind of self-contained on it, right? And
exactly.
And that had enough content with it that people were fine with just that, right? And it wasn't until they made a mission editor available and things like that it really changed, and people could drive their own content, right? So but of all those millions of missions out there, right? Some are really good, and then some are not so good, and you can't really tell, right? And you don't really want to play all 1,000 missions to figure out which are the good ones and which ones aren't, right? So there is the user rating, I think, which they had for a while, which helped kind of weed things out. But
I think I do think it's an interesting, just from a training standpoint. I mean, what a great tool. So even for example, whether if I'm watching a mission and then it's made available for me to download and then try it, because that way, that's a great opportunity for me to learn more about the aircraft, right? And so it's always the ramp, right? It's always trying to continue to get better at mastering the aircraft. And I think the missions and the training, all that comes together. So downloading the module, buying the module is just part of it. But then I think there's this big gap between how do you go from I bought it to becoming proficient.
I think each model needs to have training. It's a requirement. And of course, there are different trainings and different ways that they've been done. Some of them are videos still, I think mostly for FC3 aircraft, if I remember correctly. But I mean, to be honest, there's really a lot of need, and there are not enough developers, I guess. I'm talking about campaign developers or mission developers to fill that. That's what I feel.
Yeah, and I guess just to qualify what I was saying is like, yes, sometimes there's going to be more training than others. And that's where I think when I look at the work that you guys do, that it's absolutely fantastic, because it threads the needle in terms of trying to need to do the things with the aircraft, which actually drives you to learn some of the skills. So there's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I think, when the A10 came out, there was a lot of good training missions that were provided by Ed with it, right? So when we wanted to do our qualification campaigns, we didn't want to repeat that, right? We didn't want to just say, well, they've already shown you how to land and that kind of thing. We wanted to actually test it, right? We wanted to put in some real world checks, using altitude triggers and speed triggers and things like that and give the user feedback to say, hey, yeah, you're flying as per USAF spec, instead of just whatever. And yeah, we had a lot of great success with that. And a lot of people have learned a lot from those campaigns, just to appreciate that. And we kind of did them just for our own, to start with, just to see if we could prove it, right? Could we pass, effectively what would be the qualification? But nowhere near are our campaigns like the real thing. I'd have to, we'd have to get a real USAF pilot to come in and talk about it. I'm sure half the stuff we've done in there isn't really legit, but it's based on all the stuff we could find online and the books that we've had and things like that. And I think I did a pretty good job at it, and a lot of good feedback from people on that. But I agree with you there. There's this kind of a gap between you get the module and you get a checklist, and then what do you do, right? And having some really good training missions to kind of walk you through the whole thing is really important. So.
Well, but then coming back again a little bit, because I'd really like to try and encourage people to look more into Mission Editor. What would you guys recommend for the newbies who want to? They have ideas, they really want to do something, but they're just intimidated by the sheer number of options, triggers, and whatnot in the Mission Editor. What would you tell them, or what would you advise them to? Where to start?
I think the Mission Editor is, just as an aircraft, it is a steep learning curve. My recommendation is you have a huge idea. If you go for that huge idea right away, it's probably not going to work. You got to start small, work on the small details first, and then just build off of that. When I learned Mission Editor, oh my goodness! I looked back the other day at one of the first missions that I designed, and it's laughable. It's horrible. The inefficiency.
Same. Yeah, likewise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you learn as you go. Start small. Find a mission that you enjoy. Download it, and then open it up in the Mission Editor, and just go through each trigger and see how things work. See how it ticks. It's daunting because sometimes they're like some of the missions that I make have 1,000+ triggers in it. So maybe not pick one of those, but find a simple mission and go from there. But I will say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Just take a little bit here and there, and don't try and do it all at once.
Yeah, absolutely agree with Apache. I think you got to start small. I think what's helped us in some of our missions, because we use so many to control different things, is to kind of keep a list of the ones that you're using in the mission and what they're for as a reference. At one point, we even documented all the different trigger parameters for all the A10 switches and everything else. I think there was stuff we found online and a bunch of other stuff, but we basically kind of ended up writing our own doc that told us what each of these things did and how to use it and that kind of thing. So yeah, I would say start small, as Apache said, and try and do simple things to start with, and then as you get comfortable with the simple things, then you can start to combine them together to make more complex things happen. I think the biggest frustration to me right now is with the AI. I know Ed's working on it, and kudos for that, but I find sometimes it's just not predictable. You'll get it working one way, and then you'll try the exact same mission without any changes, and it'll do something completely different sometimes. I mean, from a programmer's background perspective, it's like, why is it doing that? It shouldn't, right? It should be consistently doing what you expect it to do, and sometimes it just does weird stuff, and hopefully they'll get all that sorted soon. But yeah, I think just working slowly at it, and like you said, it's a learning curve. It's like anything else, right? You start, and over time you get better. And yeah, some of our first missions were pretty laughable as well. Mm-hmm. Looking at them now, So.
Yeah, I remember my first Enemy Within. I think it was with text to speech for voiceovers. That was, yeah. Oh, I won't go back to that. But anyway, my 3 cents or 2 cents I'd like to add is also just use the ED forums and ask people. There's this special section for Mission Editor, and no matter what kind of question you have, just post it. Someone either will direct you somewhere or just answer, because people in the community are usually very, very helpful.
I couldn't agree more. And what Baltic had said earlier too is, if you post a question and you see 2 or 3 different responses, well, each of those responses may work, because there are sometimes 3 or 4 ways to do the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. The forum is excellent for getting answers, and people are very helpful. For that kind of stuff, which is great to see too. That's again the strength of the community, right? Willing to step in and help.
I think one of the hard concepts to catch is when you first open that multiplayer, when you first open Mission Editor and you look at what conditions, what triggers, what actions, all that stuff, and you come across flag. That was one of the things that when I first started, I had no idea what a flag was. So I would make all my missions not having to involve flags. But once you start wanting to do anything complex, flags are the most necessary thing ever. So if it takes an hour or so to understand what a flag is, just go in and experiment. That's the best way to do it, is just if you don't quite understand it, well, set up, just to have an airplane fly a 20-mile straight line, have it go through trigger points, and just see how a flag can affect certain different things, because that will really change what you can do with mission editing, is once you understand that aspect of it.
Yeah, I remember programming in Lomac and back at that time, and I don't even think they had or conditions, right? So everything was an and condition. So, so leading to your comment there about flags, they have a bit about and or type conditions too, if you want to do certain things, right? If this flag is set and this flag is not set, or this flag is set and this flag, is set something else, then yeah, definitely understanding the logic behind how these things work. But it is when you look at all the stuff in there, it can be intimidating with all the different types of triggers and conditions. And I think just recently they had an issue with the mission start trigger, right? It changed recently, and it's doing something different now. So
well, that's funny you say that. I've avoided using that mission start because I just figured there might be an issue with it. I will always have it so that time is greater than 1 and then something fires, because mission start just kind of seemed like it was something that I don't quite understand what it's looking at or when that fires exactly.
Yeah, I think the intent was for it to do a bunch of activities, actions, or things, prior to mission actually starting, right? Which is kind of strange, but I've never used it either. I've always done the time since flag to do that.
And then on top of that, we have the waypoint 0 triggers, which is a completely different thing. But it's lots of things to cover there, and it's getting pretty technical, I think, for the people that don't really use the mission editor. I mean, those differences. What I wanted to ask you is, do you? Because I do. The most clicked button in the whole menu of the DCS is mission editor. That's all what I almost always start whenever I launch DCS. And the second question related to that is, do you still treat DCS as good fun, or do you play some other games just to get away from DCS from time to time?
Yeah, I'm guilty. I'll open up DCS with an intent to fly with some friends, and I immediately click mission editor, and then they're asked, why haven't I joined yet? And I was like, because mission editor's loading.
Exactly.
It's even worse when I open a mission in mission editor and then go, wait, this isn't multiplayer. What am I doing? But yeah, to step away from mission editor sometimes, because it's I get pulled into it. Unfortunately, I don't really have too much time with other games with the 1-year-old and 3-year-old. But if and when I do, I'll sometimes jump into something with like Kerbal Space Program or Company of Heroes 2, just something that's mindless. That's kind of fun to do.
I was just going to say, likewise, I probably don't always click the mission editor. Probably it's a lot, but sometimes I'll just try a mission just to try it, or just want to go for a free flight or whatever. But to get away from DCS, sometimes I play Call of Duty, and what's the other one there? I used to play Half-Life, but that's pretty old now. I'm waiting for the next Half-Life to come out, but yeah, Call of Duty is probably my next favorite video game to be playing.
To hark on something Sabre just said, how he'll sometimes click something just to do a free flight. I'll click on mission editor to do the free flight.
Yeah, same here. Exactly.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Let's just set up how you want, where you want, and off you go.
Yeah,
that's right.
I discovered Star Citizen recently, and it's good fun to get away from DCS. But coming back to the editor, one more thing I wanted to ask you is, having campaigns out, and of course it's more difficult for Sabre because you have the biggest number of campaigns, I think, available. How much time do you then spend bug fixing or updating them to get along with all the new updates of DCS?
Well, I guess for us, yeah, we're always watching, particularly on the big updates like 256. Changed a lot of runway positions or ramp positions and that, so we have to go in and retest those. But I'd say we're always kind of tweaking it. We're watching for feedback from people to try and see how we can make them better. I know FPS is a problem right now in our F-18 campaign because of being on Nellis, and I think we're finding that just the positioning of where the aircraft is on the ramp, and it's looking down the ramp, and I think that's contributing to the FPS because we've done some testing. We've moved the parking spot, and the FPS went up. So we didn't change anything else in the mission, just the way it was positioned on the ramp, and we see a bit of an improvement. So, hopefully it'll get that sorted. But yeah, I would say we're always keeping an eye on it. It's a hobby for us, so it's evenings and weekends, for me to play on it and that. And of course, when I get other people involved, we have to get it scheduled and that kind of thing. But yeah, after the big updates, we're always busy, getting things sorted. I think Reflected just said he had 50 missions to update after 256 because his Normandy campaigns all got impacted, right? So,
does Ed give you a heads up on that?
Not formally, I would say no. I mean, if you're working off of one of the alpha releases, you might see it, but I don't know. Did you guys get told about anything?
No, I think it only happened between 1.5 and 2.5, or 2.0 was it, when we had time to do that.
Agreed. Yeah. When we were going up to 2.5, we had that alpha, so we could diagnose. But there was an issue with that, in which the speed trees were always moving from day to day between their builds, and I would fix the mission, and then I would send it to ED, and I would check it, and all the trees had shifted, so I'd have to fix stuff again, and it was a daily occurrence until they finally started kind of knocking down how the trees were going to position themselves. That was probably one of the most difficult transitions that I've had to do. But what you said, Sabre, is it's true in my court as well. There's even I've got one campaign, but there's kind of two campaigns in it. One for the MiG-15, one for the F-86. There's a lot. What is it, like 44 missions between the two?
Yeah.
And I don't always have time to test every single mission every time a new build or a new patch or a new update comes out. So I rely heavily on people giving reports through the forums as to what happens, because it's not feasible to be able to continually test every mission and then live your life on the side as well.
Yeah, it's too bad we don't have like automated or sanity testing or something that we could run in the background, right? Have a bamboo build or something that'll just run all the tests for you. But yeah, so yeah, we don't do. We likewise we wait to see if users complain, and then if they do, we jump on it right away and try and get a fix in before the next patch cycle. So it hasn't been too bad. I am worried if we do get to too large a set of missions, though, that it might become unmanageable, and I might have to hire some people to come and work for us officially, just watching forums and making mission changes. But hopefully it won't get to that.
I think the good thing is that whatever you use in your mission, even if they update it or change it, the old stuff still works. So they kind of add new stuff, but don't necessarily overwrite the old one. So like the models of, let's say, they removed the trigger aerobatics, I think, completely right now. But I guess it still works in the old campaigns. So if you had it, it still works, but you just cannot use it in the new ones. Maybe it'll return. I hope so, because it was pretty useful.
Yeah, we had a mission in our advanced training campaign where the player has to drop a flare, on a target, and they used to have the bomb in zone trigger, right? That used to work with flares, and then one time they just decided, no, I guess a flare isn't a bomb, so we couldn't use that. We had to come up with a different way to figure out where the player was flying when they pushed the pickle button.
I think there's now a signal flare in zone. Check that one out, Sabre.
Okay, yeah, I'll check that. It was working fine perfectly, and then all of a sudden one day, sorry, that doesn't work anymore. They decided to change it. So, okay.
I think the most difficult thing with some of the missions that we do with the updates is that each patch, each update, whatnot, it seems that ED will tweak the AI aircraft in such a way that they won't behave how we had initially anticipated them to do. So in one of my missions where an AI aircraft needs to launch a Magnum to take out a SAM, well, all of a sudden he's become really timid and he drops his ordnance and flees. But in previous versions, he did it properly and would fire at the target. So it's that evolving thing that we have no idea what is going to be introduced in a patch that I think is most difficult, because it can completely break a mission.
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing is the wingman, the AI wingman. It's especially for A10, they can be so unreliable and so bad in spotting or attacking anything. And that's one of the main issues people have with enemy within, is that the wingmen are usually not useful at all. And in the Raven 1, what I'm doing, I actually don't use any of the AI wingmen. I'm just using a separate flight that flies as a wingman and follows you. So you have less options or orders you can give him, but at least when you do give an order by F10, you know it will work. And it works pretty well.
Yeah, we found with the A10 wingman, the saddle connection, if you can send the targets to them and they're close enough, that would be pretty reliable for the most part. But yeah, if you're too far away from the target and that, then they can't see it. And even if you send them through the data link, that they still have problems. So it's not perfect, but at least I'm really pleased to see Ed is continuing to work on the AI. Like the dogfighting, I think got changed recently, and some people have reported that they saw some improvements to it. I noticed in our aggressor campaigns, we noticed that they weren't always doing the boom and zoom, that they were trying some different tactics in that, which was pretty good to see. The more lifelike they can make it, I heard that they were going to try and introduce like G-forces and blackouts on the AI and things like that, so they wouldn't be so unbeatable. But that would just make it more realistic for people, which I think is really good. So I think it's a work in progress, like a lot of the stuff is. But I think of where we were 10 years ago and where we are now. It's a huge improvement, not just in the graphics capabilities, but everything, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm looking forward to the future because it's really getting better and better. And from our point of view as mission developers, it gives us more options. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Every time a new update comes out, usually the first thing I do is, obviously I click mission editor, but I go in and I see, well, what kind of conditions or what kind of triggers or what actions may have changed, what's new, because I find that's really exciting for me in the position I'm at, because it gives us more options of what we can create, different avenues we can go.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that they implement some ways to manage the AI with like greater ease. So you can say, I want this particular area to be your patrol zone. Something comes in here, you go and engage it. I don't want to have to deal with the triggers to set that up. Often I find the AI are very, very quick and, shiny thing, and they chase after it and run across the map and attack the AWACS. So I find myself removing their rules of engagement to hold fire, no evasive action, stay in your zone. Then when the enemy come to you, then you get let off the leash and you can finally act freely. But it's like wrangling cats trying to get the AI to work for you.
But yeah, same thing. But then you have the threat of, once they do that, well, then they're going to go after the AWAC anyway.
Yeah, you put like a timer on them, so they said, okay, you've been fighting for 20 minutes, go home now.
I think if we had to discuss, I know you had mentioned it earlier about a limitation with the mission editor, and I think what Red Kite said there, for me, is the biggest limitation of them all, is the unpredictability of AI aircraft.
Yeah, I guess the other limit we're starting to see is the number of units in a mission, right? And when the FPS starts to drop.
I'm very experienced on that one.
Yeah. I mean, we're working right now on a red flag mission. It's got, I guess, 200 or 300 units in it, and we're finding the FPS to be a bit challenging with that right now.
Some interesting problems and solutions with the AI, in particular the ground units. If you have a group of 500 tanks in one group, it will absolutely demolish your computer. You'll freeze for a couple of seconds at a time. 500 single units on their own, just one group, one unit, 500 times. It performs so much better because they don't have to figure out their formation.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're much better at pathfinding too. Yeah. That's true. No, it's lots of those little things that you can find, and it's just incredible. But that comes with the experience, I guess, and sitting and this habit of clicking mission editor every time you launch the CS. That's where it comes from.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I think, guys, we should slowly start wrapping this one up. So let's agree to continue in the next episode. Maybe let's put something in between to see what the reaction is from the people, what questions they might pose, and we could also spend some time answering those. So thanks a lot for all that. I don't know if you have anything to add at this stage.
Really appreciate you guys inviting me on. I really enjoyed chatting with everybody. Honored to have been a part of this. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise, Baltic. Thanks for including me, and appreciate it. And a shout out to all the players and all of Ed and everybody involved in DCS. It's a great hobby. I never thought I'd be at this point in my life playing this flight sim the way it is, and I keep saying to myself, it's $1 million, flight simulator in my office. I can't believe it, So
Absolutely.
thanks everyone.
Thank you very much, guys. And what we can do, we can also reach out to one or two other third-party devs so we can make it a bit bigger, wider. And I propose let's cover more multiplayer, more dynamic campaigns, and whatever we might want to talk about later on. I still feel there's lots of area to cover for us.
Yeah, and I think you got a good idea. Is if this airs in this part and people have questions, I think that'd be great to do a Q&A or something with us.
A follow-up, yeah, for sure. Yeah, count me in. I'd be happy to help.
Great.
Any other? Do you guys, just quick question? I mean, do you guys have anything on deck that you're, in any type of new campaigns that you're working on now? I know BD's working on Raven 1.
Sorry, yeah, we have a bunch of things in the pipeline, but I'm not ready to say just yet. I guess our approach is more to wait until we're really everything's confirmed and committed before we advertise. So I would just say watch our blog for updates. Maybe that's the best thing to say then.
For myself, I kind of took a break from the new development with campaigns, and I went to creating a lot more free-to-play multiplayer missions that I have available. I plead the fifth. Maybe go the same route that Sabre went. I made mention earlier I do have something in the works. It has been delayed time and time again due to work, kids, life. But I look forward to working on that more in depth in the future.
Is it life or wife?
Happy wife, happy life, right?
I think I may have said both, but yeah, interchange them however you feel.
Yeah. And on my end, I have a completely different approach. So I tend to be open or just talk openly about things I'm doing, which backfires sometimes because it usually gets delayed. But at the moment, Raven 1 is a big thing, and we're getting there. We're mission 13 out of 15, at least for the basic building, voiceovers, etc. Then the Iron Flags with the A10 training campaign for first part finally is moving forward. We had lots of delays because of real life, and Doughboy who is kind of writing most of the script. He had problems with the hurricane and other things, but now he's, let's say, back on his feet. So we're working on that. And the Harrier campaign, which will be in 2 parts. The 5 missions that will be included in the module and will be free, and we're more than halfway through it. And then additional 10 missions, which will be a DLC, but that's later on. But it's also coming together. So yeah, busy.
Yeah, I'm always worried about the breaking the NDA, so that's kind of why we don't like to say too much. So
yeah, well, but guys, thank you very much. So I don't say goodbye. I'll say just see you around for the next episode. For those who have been listening, and if you have any questions or any ideas, feel free to ask them on the Discord channel or on the Facebook page. You'll find everything in the episode notes. And we'll come back to mission designing and mission building next time. So thank you very much and see you around.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Air Combat Sim. Don't forget to subscribe or tell a friend about it. You have a question, idea for an episode, or a special guest you'd like us to invite? Feel free to reach out on Facebook, Discord, or via email. Air Combat Sim was brought to you by BVR Productions.